Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am your host, Jake Lewitt, and on this show we normally take a deep dive into the Deep Blue Sea franchise, one DVD chapter at a time. We've done all three of the Deep Blue Sea films, covered them all, many shows on those, go back and listen to those. And we're now, whilst my regular co-host Mark Hoffmeyer is on paternity leave, I'm now looking at some Deep Blue Sea adjacent films in their entirety, generally ones I've not seen before. Something that involves sharks, or is directed by Rennie Harlin, or some other kind of aquatic animal attack, and that's what we're dealing with here, because today we're looking at Orca. What is Orca? Well, it's one of the many attempts at copying the Jaws phenomenon. Came out just 2 years later, 1977, directed by Michael Anderson, starring Richard Harris, Charlotte Rampling, Will Sampson, Bo Derek, Keenan Wynn, Robert Carradine, a real who's who of the late 70s. And it follows just a poor, defenseless killer whale out with his mate, who they get attacked, she gets killed, and he seeks vengeance upon the fisherman who killed his beloved. At least that's how I read the film. You could also read it as, there's a guy who goes out and kills a whale, and then gets annoyed when the whale tries to kill him back. We'll talk about this more. I need somebody who, this is the first time I've seen Orca, so I need somebody who has seen it before, picked the film to talk about, couldn't wait to talk about Orca. A returning guest for this season, she joined us for Santa Jaws, but is back for Orca. It's Lisa Leahy from the Sib List. Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, before we get into it, why Orca? Why when I suggested any Deep Blue Sea adjacent films, you're like, Orca, now please, Orca?
Because I was traumatized by it in 8th grade.
Okay. I can understand that. This is a harrowing film to watch.
And I still, to this day, do not remember why we saw it. It had to have been one of those things, because my science teachers, at least my science teacher in 8th grade, had the personality of a phys ed teacher, of a gym teacher.
That's unfortunate.
And so I can absolutely see him coming in one day and just going, I just can't do it this week. I think I'm going to pop in a movie. And this is
and
what he showed
Orca. Us. So that's real Paul Rudd in the new Ghostbusters film energy. You're like, hey, you can watch Cujo. I'm just going to tinker back here.
Hey, this is rated PG, so he would have been okay.
This is 1970s PG, which is very different from 2022 PG.
Accurate.
This film I can see being traumatizing. I was watching this. Yes. I was watching this on. It's one of those things where I just couldn't find time to watch it. My wife didn't want to watch this film, so I just had to fit it in on a Sunday, middle of the day. And I was watching it. I had to pause it after about 20 minutes because it was so upsetting.
Yeah, the beginning is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, when he kills. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, we'll go through the plot as we go, but he kills a whale. Well, he hunts a whale. As he's doing so, its mate is screaming in terror and anguish. And it was really, it sounds like a screaming child. It's very upsetting to listen to. So I had to stop the film and then go and play with my dogs for a while to feel a bit better.
Oh, I'm sorry. I traumatized you in return.
And then I came back and the whale that had been strung up was pregnant and gave birth on the ship, and they hosed the fetus into the water. So I had to pause and go back and play with my dogs again for a while.
Oh, you're never going to invite me on this show again, are you?
You're welcome back anytime. But this is we covered Ice Sharks a little while ago. And
oh my goodness!
Ice Sharks is a bad film, very bad film.
Is it as bad as Santa Jaws?
It is. Santa Jaws is great.
Thank you, I agree.
Because Ice Sharks is awful. It's an asylum film. So far, the only asylum film we covered, and I hope the only asylum film we will ever cover. But in the opening scene of that one, an entire fleet of huskies is massacred by a shark.
Oh my goodness!
They're all dragged into the water one by one. They're all tied together.
Oh my goodness!
That's another one of those I don't want to. Why would they? No! Stop! Run away! It was unpleasant.
That's terrible.
So was it just the childhood trauma that made you suggest Orca for today?
Kind of. It's one of those things where I knew other people would likely snag all of the obvious ones. And so I knew that I was going to have to go off into the periphery and, obviously claim Santa Jaws as quickly as I possibly could. But then I think I yelled Orca immediately after that. I don't know. There was just something about it that you have these trends in film when something is huge and it does incredibly well at the box office, and then everybody needs their version and they need to put it out. And so this ends up being one of those things after the success of Jaws. And it's just so much fun to watch it because it's like you're rooting for the whale.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, the whole time you're rooting for the whale. And I mean, people like me who do often root for a villain, you know, and it's like you have those irritating characters that you can't wait for somebody to take out. There's a plethora of them in this film. And so it's just kind of like, just keep going. But I kind of love how sneaky this one is. Like, he's so intelligent and he pops up out of nowhere and just bites your head off and that's it. But it's interesting because very much of the 70s, I remember that one particular traumatizing scene from 8th grade. And I, you know, rewatching it to speak with you today, watching that scene, I was like, oh, wait, it doesn't work the way I remember. I remember that scene as being much bloodier and much more graphic than it is. Oh, wow. So that really seared itself into my head because, you know, having seen the movie, I have it on Blu-ray. You know, I've seen it more than once, yet for some reason, watching it again, I'm like, oh, here comes that scene, and it still isn't as bad as I remember it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Yes.
It was bad enough for me.
True.
So I went in knowing that this is obviously a Jaws ripoff. It's one of, actually, if you look up Jaws ripoffs, this is deemed as one of the better ones.
Yes.
In the things like other things we haven't covered yet on the podcast, like Alligator and Grizzly. and like the late 70s Piranha.
I do love Piranha.
I haven't seen it yet, but these are all things that we might cover at some point to see how if anyone picks them and if I can get hold of them.
I love the remakes too, the reboots they did. Those are especially terrible.
Well, yeah, the Piranha 3D, fantastic film.
3DD, yes.
Well, that's a terrible film. That's one of the worst films I've ever seen. But Piranha 3D might be being covered next week. Who can say?
Oh, that's great.
It's a wonderful film. I love it very much. So this is. I'd heard this is a bad film, but one of the better Jaws ripoffs. So I went in expectations tempered, and other than all of the traumatic everything events of the film, I quite enjoyed myself.
Yay!
I love a film with like a vengeful animal who is far more intelligent than it has any right to be. I mean, this podcast started with Deep Blue Sea.
Yes.
That's the whole ethos of that.
This is absolutely in the wheelhouse for the Deep Blue Sea podcast.
And this is kind of like, have you seen the Jaws sequels?
Yes, at least once each of them, but it's been a while on some of them.
Okay, so Jaws the Revenge, the one with Michael Caine. There's the shark in that one is out for vengeance against the Brody family. And it follows them like a long way, halfway across down the coast. I think it follows them, but it sets traps. It like set.
It's the best.
and my favourite sequence in this film is when the orca makes a big fire.
Yes.
It
knows exactly how to do it.
It somehow knows, okay, this is a fuel line. I'm going to break this. And in that shack there's a fire. There's a little torch. And I'm going to knock out the supports and everything to make the fire fall down once there's enough fuel has been spilled. And then that fuel fire is going to go all the way up to this refining station up on the hill.
And then it's going to provide the perfect ambient light for me to breach, and I'm gonna glow in
the victory leaps. It's beautiful. I loved it so much. So yeah, I enjoyed this film maybe more than I should, but it was great. I'm glad that I've watched it. And I should say thank you to Matthew Stewart from Split Reviews, friend of the show, for helping me find a copy of it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's go through the plot a little bit, shall we?
Sure.
So I think if you take out all of the nature documentary footage of the whales, this film's about 70 minutes long. Because there's a lot of just like, hey, that's orca swimming. There's a pod over there. Let's just chill out and watch them for a bit. Great. But so we open with some of that. Like, the film opens with the end of Jaws 3D is these two dolphins leap out of the air, kind of doing a twist, and it's actually one dolphin mirrored.
You gotta love those effects.
But this orca opens in a similar way with two two orcas doing a little jump, which is nice.
Yes.
But yeah, so
Interesting layering of film and footage in those opening scenes.
Yes, this is the effects have not aged terribly well, shall we say. There's a couple of scenes where like, oh, they just threw a toy shark in the air. Okay.
Hey, it worked for me.
Yeah, this isn't a complaint. This is what makes the film great.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we open the film with some orcas jumping around. We then see there's a diver. I'm not sure what she's doing, but she's this is Charlotte Rampling.
Oh, Charlotte Rampling, yes.
Yes, the great Charlotte Rampling.
She's amazing. Yes.
She's stunning.
This is what gives Orca some gravitas.
Yeah, I was watching.
When she shows up, you know it's classy.
I was watching thinking I recognize her. I couldn't place it, but if you had to guess, I would have thought this is far below the caliber of Charlotte Rampling. She would never appear in Orca. Surely not.
She is the intelligent one.
Yes, but so she is out doing some diving research.
I think she's recording. Something.
Okay, and she's accosted by a great white shark, and meanwhile the good ship Bumpo, as it's
yes,
never explained why it's called Bumpo. I love that it's called Bumpo. I don't know where that name comes from, but it's great.
I mean, all I can think of is Natty Bumpo, but that's American stories, and this is Newfoundland, and he's Irish, and I can't get there exactly. Like Natty Bumpo is in Last of the Mohicans. Like it's like a character who was raised by Native Americans, and I'm fuzzy on this knowledge because I haven't read it all the way through, and it's not my wheelhouse. So, but I know of the character. I still can't figure out why it attaches here, unless we're trying to just throw out to classic literature, and this is just one of the many references.
Could be. I didn't pick up on it, but if anyone's going to pick up on classic literature, it would be you. English teacher that you are. So
there are a couple of attempts to make this classy.
Well, I will take your word for it. So whilst Charlotte Rampling is doing some diving, there is the Bumpo ship, which is a crew of 4, headed up by OG Dumbledore, Richard Harris, as Captain Nolan, getting to use as you said, his real life Irish accent, which I thought was fake for a long time. Turns out, no, that's an actual voice. That's how
actually what he sounds like.
I thought so. You got him. You got his first mate Novak, played by Keenan Wynn. His Paul, Peter Houghton, and Annie, the film debut of one Bo Derek, which I had no idea about until I saw the closing credits, because I did not know what Bo Derek looked like.
Oh, fair enough.
It's a name I've heard many times, but I think this is the first film or anything I've actually seen her in.
Well, I have to say that I have not actually seen the movie, but you know her as the running girl on the beach with the braids from the movie 10.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
See, that's it. That's how I know her. So you hear Bo Derek and you think of that, and it's a little different here.
Apparently she's in like Tommy Boy. I've never seen Tommy Boy.
I saw it once. That's plenty for me.
Oh yes, it's a comedy, of course. And
yes, like, it's also not a funny one.
I mean, you're not the best person to judge for that, I would say.
Oh, shush. At least I've seen it, Jay.
This is true. And she appears in other shark-related things. She's in Sharknado 3 and The Last Sharknado. Hopefully riffing on her appearance in Orca.
Amazing.
So that is the crew of the Bumpo. And they're out trying to catch a shark to sell to an aquarium or a SeaWorld kind of thing. But their plans are scuppered by the diver and her assistant Ken, played by Robert Carradine. So when they see that there's a shark in the water, they invite Rachel, Charlotte Rampling, aboard. Don't invite Ken aboard. Ken has to stay on the dinghy, trailing behind. He then screws up with the motor, falls in the water, and so you get the wonderful Richard Harris yelling, that Egypt's in the water!
Brilliant writing in this film. Brilliant.
Fantastic. But he does not die. The shark, before the shark can get to him, it is taken out by our hero, by the Orca.